In this lecture, we'll show how to implement some of the more common high-level programming languages. In the last lecture, we introduced this idea of high-level programming languages. So we went over some of the more common examples. We looked at Java, C++, C#, Ada, Python, and these are really great languages. But what I want to do here is actually show you how to write, compile, and run programs using these languages. Because it's one thing to actually see on a video what the code looks like, and I can go over all the details, but it's another thing to actually write out the implementation and show you why we have these different parts in our program and how to make that work. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to a particular website that has all the IDEs for these languages. And this is a really great site. I really hope that you spend some time looking over some of the things that's on there. Now, if you have your own IDEs like Dr. Java, Eclipse, or Visual Studio, that's perfectly fine. You're welcome to use those. But I'm going to use a particular web page that's completely free, and I encourage you to follow along with each of the examples that we're going to do here. So we're going to implement some very basic programming examples just so you have an idea of how to actually implement code in these different languages. So I'm going to go to, so I'll put it up here, www.tutorialspoint.com. So tutorialspoint.com. And this is the site. It's a really great site. I hope you, like I said, hope you get to take a look and play around with some of the stuff on here. And the link that we're going to take a look at is this coding ground. So if we click on that, and what we get here, up this first part with these online terminals, we're not going to mess with any of this, but we're going to take a look at these online IDEs. So we see that we have a variety of different languages. Most of these you're probably not familiar with. In fact, a lot of these I'm not even familiar with. So I'm going to try to play around with this on my own. But anyway, what we're going to do here is actually look at some of the different languages on here and look at these IDEs and how to implement these languages. The first language we'll start with is Java. So we're on our Tutorials Point site. So let's see if we can find Java. Now, fortunately, all this is in alphabetical order. So if we just scroll down here, we have Java and Java 8. I'm going to click on Java 8 because that is the most recent version of Java. This may take a second to load. Here we go. And what we have here are three parts to this online IDE. So this part right here is where we would actually enter our code, and then when we're done typing it, we can compile it, and then we can execute right here. This part over here just gives us the list of all the files that we would have on this program, and we can actually download and store anything that we write on here. And this part down here is our terminal. So here is where we would interact with the program. Now this particular program already has a pre-made program here. So this IDE does give us a pre-made Java program called Hello World, where all this does is just simply prints out Hello World. So remember from the last lecture, we looked at some very basic examples. I think we had the user enter a value, we incremented it by 1, and then we printed that value. So this program is just simply going to print Hello World. So I can compile it, and then I can click on execute to run it. And sure enough, here it says Hello World. So let's actually do a different example here. Let's actually write a program so that way we can understand Java a little bit more. And I encourage you to follow along on here. So as you're watching the video, you can go to this site or use some other IDE and just enter the code for the program, compile it, and run it, and see for yourself how to actually implement a Java program. So what we're going to do in this example is we're going to have the user enter two integers. We'll get the sum of those two integers, and then we'll print out that sum. So it's a pretty simple program, but it's at least enough to get us exposed to how to write a program in Java. Now, if you want to learn more about Java, we do have other courses. We have Computer Science 1, Computer Science 2, that actually goes over Java in far more depth than what we will do in this class. But let's go ahead and start this up. So if we're going to have the user enter in integers, we need to store them somewhere. So we need to have variables, just like we've done with our algorithms before. We've had these variables that would have some values. So we need to actually declare these variables. We need to have some place in memory that would store them. So I'm going to get rid of this line because I don't need this right now. So in Java, to declare a variable, we would have the data type, the type of the value that we're going to store, a space, and then the name of our variable. So since we're going to store an integer, the data type for this is going to be an int. So I'm going to type in int, so that's our data type, and then I put in a space, and then I can put in whatever name I want for a variable. So I can say something like int a, and then we would end with a semicolon. So this creates a variable which is called a, and it's going to store an integer. Now we're going to actually have the user enter two variables, two integers. So we need to have two variables for that. So then I can do on the same line, add a comma, and then I can put in another variable. So I'm going to say b in this case. So this line means now that I have two integer variables, one is called a and one is called b. Now we're going to do one more because we need to get the sum of these two integers. So I'm going to put in another comma, and I'm going to enter sum. So this sum is going to be another variable, and it's going to store an integer. And what we're going to do in a little bit is we're going to add the values of a and b and store that in sum. So we see here that we can actually declare multiple variables on the same line. We just have to make sure that they're separated by commas and they're all the same data type. If we used a different data type, it would have to be on its own individual line. Okay, so we have a, b, and sum. So now we're going to interact with the user. We normally want to include some type of prompt that would ask the user or tell the user what to enter. So to do output in Java, we would put in system.out.print, and notice that the S in system is capitalized. This is required. And then we're going to have some parentheses, and I'll put in a semicolon. Now what we put inside the parentheses is going to be what actually gets displayed in the terminal. And we have to surround this in quotes. So now whatever I put in the quotes is what's going to get printed. So I'm going to say something like enter a, and then a colon and a space. So if I were to, I'll go ahead and compile this and run it just to show you what happens. So if I compile, no errors, that's good. And if I execute, may take a second. There you go. I had to click on it one more time, but it has enter a right here. So it took a little bit of a second there. Just probably one of the issues with using the IDE online. Now let me do a couple of other things in here. Actually, I want to change this. I don't want to call this hello world. We're going to call this something else because in Java we have this public class and then we can give it some name. So let's call this sum because that's closer to what we're actually doing here. Now this program is nowhere near where we want it to be. So I mean, all it does is just prints out enter a. So we need to actually have the user enter in something. So the way we do that is we actually use specific methods from a class called the scanner class. And this allows us to do things like inputting an integer or inputting a double or inputting a string or a character. So the way we need to do that is we actually have to create an object of the scanner class. Java is an object-oriented programming language. And that just simply means is that we have these classes that define the attributes and the operations that we can perform on a particular object of that class. And then in our main program, we would create those objects. So we need to create an object of the scanner class before we can actually do any input. And I'm going to put that, let's say, we'll put it right here. So the way we do this is we would put in the name of our class. In this case, it's going to be called the scanner class. So we'll do scanner. And once again, the S in here is capitalized. We're going to put in the name of our object. So I'm going to say console. And I'm going to say equals new scanner and then some parentheses. So this sort of will create an object of the scanner class called console. Now this new scanner is the actual object and all that information, that data gets stored in this console name. Now I still need to put something inside the parentheses because if I'm going to have the user do input, I have to specify where that input is coming from. Does it come from the keyboard? Does it come from a file? So that's what I specify inside here. So I'm going to type in system.in, and that handles the standard input or the keyboard. So notice we have system.out. This stands for standard outputs or the terminal or the monitor. And system.in takes care of standard inputs such as the keyboard. we're not going to worry about files in this class. Okay, so we have our console scanner object, and we're still not ready to use this just yet. This scanner class comes from a package called the util package, and this is not given to us by default. So we have to import that package. Java has a bunch of different packages, a bunch of different classes that are defined, but we have to decide ahead of time which ones we're going to use. So if you remember in the other example, we had an import statement at the beginning of our program, and we need to do the same thing here. So I would type in import. I'm going to do java.util. Now I could do .scanner, and this will input stuff just from the scanner class, but I can also do java.util.star. And this actually will import everything from the util package. Some older versions of Java would specify the exact classes, but our memory has improved since then, and we can just go ahead and include everything in there just to make things simpler. So this should work so far. So now that I'm going to close up some space here, and let's see, can I adjust the size of this a little bit? Here we go. I want to make sure we can see the entire program if we can. So I'm going to extend this just a little bit more. Okay, there we go. So we have our variables, we have our scanner. So now we can actually do the user input. So the way we do that is we put in the name of our scanner object, which in this case is called console. And I'm going to put in a dot, and then I can include the exact method that allows us to input an integer. And in the scanner class, this is called next and then int with the I capitalized. So this part right here will actually have the user enter in some value, and it has to be an integer. Otherwise, we get an exception, and bad things happen when we get exceptions. Now, this does give us an integer, but we have to store it somewhere. Well, that's where these variables come into play. So what I can do on the left side is I'm going to say a equals console.nextInt. So what that means is when I run this line, I'm going to enter an integer in my terminal, and then that value gets stored in A. Now let's do the same thing for B. Now before I do that, I'm going to add one more line. I'm going to do system.out.print then ln with some parentheses. And what this system.out.print ln, or what I usually call print line, does is it's going to print an end line character. Now we don't see that in our terminal, but what that means is the next thing that gets printed is on a new line. And what this does is it allows us to make sure that enter A is on one line, and then the next thing is on a new line. So normally we include this type of statement whenever we want to make sure that something is printed on the next line in our output. Okay, so now I'm going to do the same thing for B. So I'm going to do system.out.print, and I'm going to say enter B, a colon, and I'm going to do B equals console.nextInt, and then I'll do system.out.print line. Okay. Now hopefully you're following along. Make sure that you are following along. If I'm going too fast, you can pause the video and you can type up the code, and you can resume once you have everything that's on here. But I want to make sure that you are actually following along. You may or may not see this on potential homework assignments or exams. Just saying. So this will allow us to enter A and enter B. And so when we get to this part in the code, A and B should have those integers. So that means the next step is that we're going to actually add those up and store it in our sum. So the way we're going to do that is we're going to do another assignment statement. So we're going to take this result and store it in sum. So I'll say sum equals, and then we just take A and B and add them together. I'll say A plus B, and then a semicolon. So I think I mentioned before, but I'll just reiterate. In Java, every statement ends with a semicolon. In fact, most programming languages end each statement with a semicolon. There are some that are a little different, and we'll see some examples of that later on, but most of the newer high-level programming languages end with a semicolon. All right, so now we have our sum. So now we can include a print statement that would actually print out what that sum is. So we need another output statement. So we need system.out, and I'm going to use print line in this case. Oops, or print line. There we go. And just like with print, whatever I put inside of here would actually get displayed. So if I don't put anything in there, nothing gets printed except for the new line character. So I could put in some quotes. So I'm going to do a little trick here. I'm going to say the sum of a space, and then I can actually print variables in my output statement. So the way we do that in Java is after the quotes, I put in a plus sign. This is our string concatenation for our output statements. And then I can put in the variable that I want. So I'm going to say a, and then another space, plus, and then we're going to put another quote. I'm going to say and space quote, and a plus, and then a b, another plus, another quote, space is, space quote, plus sum. All right, so let me explain what I did here. So these plus signs in the print line statement are string concatenation operators. So what happens is this a, b, and sum, they initially store integers, but in here they will be evaluated to integers. Or I'm sorry, they'll be evaluated to strings, I should say. So they become strings, and then we concatenate them with the other parts of the string. So this whole thing is going to turn to one giant string. It's going to be the sum of whatever a is, and whatever b is the sum of that. Okay? And that's our entire program here. So let's just make sure this works. So I'm going to click on compile. Okay, there is an error. Public class sum. Okay, so even though I changed the class name to sum, since the file name is still hello-world.java, it does not like that. So I'll just put this back to hello world just to make the IDE happy. There we go. That should make the error go away. Okay, there we go. No errors. So we'll go ahead and click on execute. Okay, so I'm going to scroll this up a little bit so you can see the terminal a little bit better. Here we go. Enter A. So let's do something like 5. Okay, I got to click on here. Enter 5. And then I'll hit enter. And then here we go. It asks for enter B. So we stored 5 in A. And now I'm going to store something in B. Let's do 6. So I'm going to do 6. I'm going to hit enter. So 6 was stored in B. So we compute A plus B. Let's scroll down. Okay, it won't let me scroll down. That's fine. So A plus B, 5 plus 6 is 11. And sure enough, it prints the sum of 5 and 6 is 11. So here you go. There is your Java program.